Hey, Real Green Ninja here. The video you're about to watch is a supplement to the existing tutorials and help videos already available on the Real Green website. I do take a more casual approach because I'm presenting this information as I would if you called in, although I may have a little fun with it. This video is based upon the information I, as a Real Green technician, would provide using my experience on the help desk. This video was created on my own time to assist with areas of the software that may be waiting for an official help video or tutorial. At the beginning of the training video, I will have the version of the Service Assistant the video was made with. I will also try to be as accurate as possible, but be aware, as Service Assistant updates are released, things may change. I'm using the name Real Green Ninja as not to stand out from the other amazing technicians that I work with. I hope the information in this video helps you, so grab a cup of coffee, and I hope you learn something new. Hey, Real Green Ninja here. Today we're going to be talking about the job screen, so let's begin. Now, today, this particular video here, I'm going to talk about the basics of the job screen in general, all right? Now, the job screen, pretty much between a program, a service, and a special job and a service call, are pretty much going to be exactly the same. Now, some things are going to be showing, some things are going to be hidden. Again, you can turn them on and off. Right now in this video, I'm going to go over the basics of the job screen itself, and I am going to be doing another video talking about the different kinds of jobs and how those screens are set up. Okay, so we're going to go into lawn care, and again, you'll see on the main customer screen here, you have ones that are black with white text and other ones that are white with white background with black text. If it's a black background with white text, that is a program. The white background with black text is either a special job or a service call. All right. Usually they're like one shots, or in this case, like a mowing, it's a repeating special. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to open up the lawn care for right now. And we're going to open up again. I'll plan to do a video explain the difference between the different jobs, the job types and their screens. All right. So across top here, you'll see we have a couple buttons. We'll come back to that in a moment. But pretty much it's going to tell you, in this case, it's going to say program. It's going to tell you what type it is. It's going to tell you the name of the program. If there's a call ahead reason for any of the services that are on the grid below, each one of these services will have this call ahead reason listed. Also, the size of when you added the program and if it pulled it from the customer's account. Now, this size here is pretty much determined when you set up your program. In this case, you're under here. You're telling it this is the unit of measure that you want to use. All right. Under services, like a special job, you're going to set it over here. So again, it's pulling that size information off the customer screen saying, hey, do they have 1,000 square feet? Yep. Okay, use that number. And again, there's ways of changing what sizes it can pull. And again, that's another video. We also have the difficulty value, or the diff value. Let's say you have a 25,000 square foot property. It's nice and flat. It's fairly easy. You just walk up and down doing your spraying or whatever, okay, or your lawn mowing or whatever. But let's say it's a little harder to do than normal. All right, let's say it's about 10% harder. You can change this diff value to, it might help if I go into edit mode. Been here over a year and a half and I still get tripped up by edit mode. You can say it's 10% harder than a normal lawn of that size. Now, when you do that, it's going to ask you if you want to recalculate service prices. So you'll see right now it's 86.05. If I hit yes, it's now 96 or 94.66. All right. Or maybe it's 10% easier, which most people don't do it, but you could do it and say, okay, it's 10% easier, recalculate, and then it goes through and recalculates it at 10% less. So again, that difficulty value, the diff value, will alter the pricing. So let's go ahead and put that back to 1. Now be aware though, if you put it back to 1, it's not going to recalculate. So I'm going to go ahead and manually change that back to 86.05. Again, most people don't mess with it, but if you want to, that's what that's there for. All right. Source, where did the customer find out about this job for you? Now, most of the time, the first job that a customer signs up for has the same source as the main customer screen. But maybe we were out in the property and they said, oh, you guys do aeration or you guys do lawn mowing, I'd like to sign up for it. Well, the source of the service or program might be then different because, again, they found out about it or requested it from a different source, all right, different advertising. And what's nice about that is you can go through and actually run reports against, what jobs have what sources, and you can see where advertising dollars most well spent. For example, let's say you have a neighborhood, the yard signs, there's not a lot of people that sign up because of yard signs, and you can keep track of it. You might, not spend as much money on the yard signs. Maybe you might spend a little bit more money on the truck wraps because the truck wraps are more effective. So again, you can see where help keep track of where your advertising dollar is best spent. Billing type, there are there's a couple different billing types in here. Now, most of the time with like fertilization, you have it set to regular invoice, like an aeration, regular invoice. But with like mowing or something, you might have it set to statement only because you do what's called a monthly invoice. Again, another video. Like I said, though, is you can select the billing type. Now, the most common billing types you're going to select is either regular invoice, statement only, or credit card. All right. Now, credit card means if you're set up with CAW, new credit card processing stuff, you can actually charge the person's credit card when you post production on this job. Okay. If they're set up for auto pay, or that you told the system that this customer is going to be using a credit card. ACH is automatic clearinghouse, which is kind of like your electronic checks. There are some people that are signed up for that through CAW and all that stuff, but again, it's not as common. Now the installment one this one you have to be very, very careful with. In fact, when I did talk about my installment, how to set up an installment training video and stuff like that, I always tell, when I do my trainings, I always say, do not set it to installment on this screen. Always do it through the check boxes under the installment tab. Again, watch the other video and you'll see what I'm talking about. But like I said, if you set it to installment here and forget to set up that installment, this customer would never be charged for the service. But again, most of the time it's either going to be regular invoice or statement only, unless they're auto pay, and then you're probably going to do credit card. All right? If the customer has a PO, like if they're a commercial customer, you can hit that little box here, type in a PO number, and that PO number or purchase order number will be printed on their invoices. All right. Under last price increase, again, this is the last time the prices got changed, obviously because it changed today when I was playing around with the difficulty value. It put today's date in there. If you happen to catch it at the beginning of the video, you'll see, I think it was back in May when I originally added the program. By default, when you add a program to a customer's account, that's going to be the last price increase date. And then, of course, if you change pricing information throughout the year, we'll update that date. You can also manually change the date if you want to. Discount. This is going to be a discount that's applied to any service that's showing on this grid. Again, right now we're looking at the program screen, but it works for the same way for the repeating specials like the lawn mowings and stuff like that. Or like maybe you're doing like a mosquito control as a repeating special. It means that any service that's on this grid, when you go to generate the invoice, is going to get this particular discount code. Now, you got to be careful because these discount codes will stack. So if I have this code here and this code here, they'll get 10% off and then they'll get an additional 10% off. So again, just be careful when you're doing that. Just be aware of that. Now you'll want to have a discount code, for different situations, stuff like that. Like let's say you have a free visit discount code, 100% off. Well, you don't necessarily want to use that for friends and family that you're giving a complete discount because you can run reports against how much money have been discounted off of each particular discount code. So it'll make it easier to track, saying, well, okay, if we give everyone free visit, well, how many of those are friends and families? How many of those are regular customers? Where if you use different discount codes, set up different discount codes, make it easier to track. All right. Down here, the route. This is the routing information when you're pulling your invoices. We're going to select what route you want to do as well as what day code you want to use. And again, by default, most people tend not to worry about the day code, but you definitely want to set your route. Now, smaller companies that start out, they might have one route. All right. As they get bigger, they'll add more routes to the system, and as they more, increase your service area, or you might have different routes for different trucks and so on and so forth. But again, this is going to be the route and the day code are selection criteria when you're pulling invoices. You can also hit search for a route to find people that are on similar routes and go through and say, okay, we want to put them on the same route as this person, stuff like that. Okay, and again, you'll see by street name and subdivision and so on and so forth. So if you're not quite sure who needs to be on what route or what route they're supposed to be on, you can see who's in the neighborhood. All right, sequence number. When you pull your invoices, the sequence number is going to tell the system what order to put those invoices in. Again, by default, most people leave that blank because they have either routing assistant or mapping assistant, which allows them to throw them on a map and find the most efficient route. If you don't have the mapping or routing assistant, you can again put the sequence number in there, and that sequence number, when you go and pull your invoices, will actually put them in that order. So again, you'll see I have all my sequence number zeros. Again, if I had like 10, 20, 30 on these customers, it would put them in whatever order based on sequence number because they're all on the same route. It would be the same route, day code, and then sequence number. So again, like I was saying, though, most people don't use them nowadays, but it's there if you want to because you don't have mapping or assistant or routing assistant. Now, you can also assign a temporary route, and again, there's ways of mass assigning temporary routes. Maybe you have the route set up by technician name, and for some reason the technician is not able to do the work. You can go ahead and temporarily assign it to a different technician or a different route, and then when you post production on the next service of this program, it will go off the temp route, and then it will flip it back to the regular route for everything going forward. Now, be aware, as far as scheduling, reporting, and stuff like that, pulling your invoices, it's going to use whatever's in the temp route. Now, you'll notice that the temp route and the permanent route are the same right here. But again, if I change this to, let's say, CL1, and then saved it, when I went and posted production on round 1 here, or when I went to pull round 1, it's going to be pulling on the CL1 route. When I post production, it will flip it back to whatever I had it to originally. In this case, RT1. All right. So again, different. There's a lot of little nooks and crannies of software. I always tell my trainings, focus on the basics, and then once you get the basics down, then go forward and learn some of the more advanced features like the temporary routes and stuff like that. Standard price. Standard price is the most common price that's on the service grid down here. If I change this to $100 right there, the standard price does not change. Now the total price did. Okay, because again, the total price is how much the total price is, but the standard price did not change. If I were to change another one, again, standard price does not change. If I were to change a third one, which will now make $100 the more common price, boom, you'll see the standard price changes. All right. So again, this is the most common price that's on this grid. Now, if you want to mass change all the prices of everything that has not been posted in production yet, you can go through and just set your price there, hit save. It will say, do you want to change? Yes, and boom, you'll see I'll put it back in mass back to where it was before. All right. Again, total price is the sum of all the prices that are on the service grid. Last service. This is the last time you went out and did the work under this program. Now, the last service date gets filled in with the latest done date. All right. So when I post production in this round 1, it would fill in the production, the done date for round 1 as the last service date. When I post production for round 2, it would then update the last service date to whatever the production date was for, or the done date was for round 2. Now, be aware though, if under your services program specials and you go to programs, if this dependent checkbox is not checked, when you perform that service, it will not update that last service date. So again, like this one right here, if I post production on this XAS, the extra added service, it would not update the done date because I do not have this dependent checkbox checkmarked. All right, and again, there's situations where when you do your renewals, it carries over the information from last service year to next service year. If you did your renewals before you finished round 5, or before you finish round 6 or whatever, well, you'd have to. There's a utility you run to correct the last service date or update the last service date to match whatever the latest service was. Again, because it copies exactly what it is from last service year and the next service year. And if you hadn't done round 6 yet, it wouldn't know what round 6's done date was, and it doesn't automatically update the next service year's done date when you post production around 6. All right, program notes to technician. This is going to be a note that shows up on every single invoice that's under the in service grid here, or if you're doing like work orders, or I'm sorry, job report, or driver's reports or worksheets, it's going to print the program notes to technician on every one of the jobs that this customer has. If you have an expiration date in there, it's not going to delete this note. What it's going to do is it's going to stop printing after this date. So maybe the family, maybe the grandparents are watching the grandchildren or whatever for the summer, and they want to make sure that, before you come over or something like that, you can go ahead and just, something you want your technician to know, make sure the kids aren't in the yard before you start spraying, that sort of thing. And then again, after that date, it will just stop printing on the invoices. Now, you'll see that I have these curly braces right here. What these curly braces are, and it's usually the shift bracket key on your keyboard, any notes that are between the curly braces can be removed when you do your renewals in the next season. Under process renewals here, under tools process renewals, there is a option to remove notes inside curly braces, outside of curly braces, or do nothing. Okay, if you don't use curly braces ever, you don't have to worry about what this is set to. But if you do have the curly braces in there, you will want to make sure that you are choosing the right option here, because if you have notes that you wanted to keep inside curly braces, maybe you had it so it stood out or something, you want to make sure to set that to do nothing, because by default it says remove it. But again, what's nice about it, it creates a temporary note. Again, going back to the situation with watching the kids or whatever, when you did your renewals, you'd put them between that note between the curly braces. It would stop printing after September 1st, as well as next season the notes would drop off if I chose to remove the notes in curly braces. Program notes to customer. Again, it's going to be in the customer portion for any of the invoices that you generate for this customer that's on the service grid. And again, it also has its own expiration date. Don't know if I mentioned call ahead. Call ahead is, and I'll backtrack just a hair here. Call ahead is, again, something your technician needs to call the person ahead of time saying, hey, we're coming out, we're doing work or whatever. With the call ahead reason, this is going to be printed on every single one of these invoices, just like the discount, or I'm sorry, yeah, just like the program notes, technician notes, and so on and so forth. All right. Now, down here in the service grid, you'll see it has a rounds numbered out. It also has whether or not you are doing it. Y means yes, we're going to do it. $sign means it's been printed. S means the job's been serviced. N means we're never, ever, ever going to do it. Asterisk means we want to do it ASAP. And then we have a whole bunch of skip codes. So let's say this customer right here signed up after you've completely done with round 1. You can go through and say, give a skip code, began too late and done in the year. And everything except for the N, everything except for N will get flipped to a Y when you do your renewals at the end of the season. All right. Under size here, again, maybe you're doing a different size for this particular property for the first visit. Maybe you're just doing the front yard. Again, you can change sizes on the fly. Now, if you do change the size and you have your price chart set up and everything, you can even tell it to recalculate the service price, and it'll go through and recalculate it for you. All right. So we go ahead and put that back to 25 there. There we go. Yes. Okay. Now, you can also change prices on the fly. Maybe you want to charge them $100 for this visit. Okay. Again, you can change the individual price. Now, be aware, though, when you change this price, it's also going to change the production price and possibly change the renewal price. So again, it's one of those things we always recommend use discount codes instead of manually changing the price, unless you make it a little higher. Most people not too worried about making it higher. If you want to charge this person $90 or whatever, that's fine. It's just, again, be careful if you lower the price because your production value is going to go down when you run production reports. Again, I'll show you that here in a moment. Discount. This is going to be a discount that's applied specifically to this service. Let's flip this back to Y here. There we go. Let's say, for example, this customer here, you signed up for them and they said, okay, you get the first service for free. We can give them a free visit discount code. And then when you do your renewals, depending on whether or not you have the discount set to permanent, it will or will not carry over. So again, if we go to data, company parameters, financial parameters, discount surcharges, we look at our free visit. Our free visit is not checkmarked as permanent, so it will drop off when I do my renewals. If it's like a senior citizen discount, you probably have it as permanent. But again, you'd probably put the senior citizen discount up here in this discount field, so all the services get that senior citizen discount code. The A column here, this is for manual associations. I did a video on how to set up multiple services on the same invoice, or also known as associations. Again, if you want more detail, but pretty much you're going to put a letter or number here. Any services or programs for the service year that you're looking at, they have the matching letter or number, we'll then put those services on the invoice up to 3 services. So again, it's one of those things where if you know absolutely for certain you're doing 2 services on the same visit, you can set it up, and it doesn't matter whether or not you set up associations on the invoice screen. They're linked under the customer screen, and they will automatically be associated when you go and pull that work. And it doesn't matter which of the 2 services or 3 services you pull, it'll pull all of them onto the same invoice. Printed box here, the printed column, this is the date the work was printed out, okay, or the invoice was printed out. Now, if you're doing a monthly invoice, okay, when you do monthly invoices, this printed date will not fill in until you post or print out the monthly invoice. So be aware of that. Okay. Again, that has to do with like lawn mowing. Usually people do monthly invoices, but for the most part with fertilization like this job right here, the printed date is when we print out the invoice. All right. Now, a really cool trick, if you're on this printed date right here and you double-click the box, it will actually throw that job onto the invoice screen for you, so you can actually print an individual invoice out without having to go through and set all your criteria and everything up. Now, if there is a date in there, it will then prompt you to say, hey, this work has already been printed. Do you want to print it again? And you can click yes, and it will do the same thing I just showed you. Or if it's been completed, it'll say, hey, this work's been completed. Are you sure you want to print the invoice? And so on and so forth. And then again, it will throw the invoice onto the invoice screen for you. All right. Done box, the done column here. If again, this is when you did the work. This is going to be the date you posted in production. This is the transaction date you told the system you did the work. If you double click the done box, it will take you to the production screen for that customer for that job. Now, because I didn't print it out and I don't have like assign a technician and stuff like that because I didn't print out the invoice, I do have to select my employees and dates and stuff like that. But again, it's pretty much like your normally production entry. You put the information in, save, and then post production on it, and that tells the system work's been completed and charge the customer. Schedule. If you have a schedule date, if you tell the customer I'm going to be out there on a certain day, let's say I'm going to be out there on 6/15/2015, you can put that in there, and then when you pull up the scheduler, it pulls up the scheduler. You can also pull your invoices based off a schedule date on the invoice screen as opposed to last service date. And again, it's going to look for the dates between that fall between the date range you've selected. Again, usually with fertilization, you don't do schedule dates, but things like aerations, repeating specials, stuff like that, you may use schedule dates. Okay. the notes here, and actually most of this information here, date sold and so on and so forth, is located on this lower section. Some of it's in the detail view, some of it's in this view we'll talk about here in a moment. But what I want to show you here is it will show you what the service codes are for those particular routes in the program, or again, if you're like in a special job or whatever, you can scroll over and you can see what those codes are. All right, scroll back over here, and you can also change this grid around. Let's say you want the A column to be first, you can actually slide it over, put the A column right there. So again, you can move it around a little bit if you want. Now, I will be honest, there have been times I've jumped in a customer's screen. I was working with a client and trying to troubleshoot. I'm like, what the heck's going on? Oh, wait a minute. They have their columns all sorted around. So it's not what I'm used to seeing. Most people don't bother changing it, but you can if you want. You know, I mean, again, you can have the sizes first, or you can have the description as first. Again, you can play around with it. Just be aware if you call for support, sometimes we'll get a little confused. Like, what the heck? Okay. All right. Once we figure it out, we'll be good. All right. Down here in this yellow area, give me 1 second here. Let me save that. I just want to close that real quick. There we go. Okay, down here in this yellow area, this is where you're going to put in the estimate information. All right, if you're using this little lightning bolt and you go to like the measurement reject sale and you put the information in there, it will throw it from that screen into this area right here. But you can manually put that information. You go to edit mode. You can set the estimate requested date by double clicking that. And again, this is only as a protection and stuff, and you can make certain changes and stuff. Like I can change the date now. Requested by who actually placed the request, who took the request in your company. If you want to print out an estimate, you just hit the little print estimate. Oh, I'm gonna hit save here. There we go. Hit the little save button, and it will throw the estimate onto the estimate printing screen for you, and then you can turn around and print that person's estimate out, and then it will throw the date in there for you. Again, if you want to change the date, you have to go into edit mode, and then click on the little calendar. You can change it. Estimated by the person that actually did the estimate, and then the date it was actually given to the customer. All right. If you call the customer back, you can put a callback date, as well as you can add a new call to the call log. Give me a second here. Hit that. Add a new call to the call log. Again, I think I have a crash course on the call log. If I don't, I should be getting one of those out there pretty quick here. As well as you can even text your employee, and it will warn you like this has not been printed. You can text an employee, hitting the little phone icon right there. Last contact is the last time you contacted the customer about it, and then also who referred the customer for this job or whatever. Again, a lot of people don't tend to worry about doing the estimate part of things, because a lot of people don't use the lightning bolt, but again, it's there if you want to use it. Over here, the hold tos and hold froms, or the hold reasons and stuff like that. If you watch my video on the customer tab, you'll see that you can actually put customers themselves on hold. It works pretty much the same way. The only difference is if you put a program or service on hold, you can still pull the other work. All right. Again, it's only this one. Again, maybe they're having a party. They don't want you to do fertilization, spraying chemicals, but they'd be okay for you to mow on the lawn, or okay for you to go out through an aeration or something. You can then turn around and put the fertilization program on hold, but leave the rest of the services and programs untouched. Again, just hit edit mode, set your dates, and then when you put your reason, and remember, when it goes on hold, it will actually turn blue like this, and that will let you know that they're currently on hold, and then when it goes off hold, it will turn back to that whitish color. All right. Now, if you're using the lightning bolt and you're doing it for like estimate not sold, or you can even do it manually where you want to indicate that the estimate was rejected. And again, the estimate being the yellow statuses, you hit that little yellow dot here, there's a reject date and the reject reason. Also, if you cancel out a customer, and that area is where the cancellation information is going to be. You'll see there's a cancel date, the person that canceled the job, as well as what the cancel reason is. Now, be aware, though, if you cancel something out and then turn around and reactivate it, that canceled information is still going to be in there. You're probably going to want to, when you reactivate a job, maybe you talk the customer into getting back in there, you're going to want to go back here and reset this back to blanks. Now, the canceled date, you do have to have permission to make changes, and the reason why is because you don't want your salespeople manipulating the system in order to be able to get the best commission or whatever. So again, a lot of times people will lock the ability to change that cancel date, and it's just get someone higher up in the company that has permission to make that change. And then I'm going to change it back and hit save, and now if I go to cancel, you see it's all blank. So again, keep that in mind. Now, if you do cancel, you can even generate a cancellation number by clicking the little icon, and it will give you what the cancellation number is. The only reason I have one is because I actually put it into a cancel status in the past. All right, down here in this green area, this is your sales information, the date it was sold. You can also put in a confirmation date. If you need to get confirmation by from your customers, you can put in up to two salespeople, as well as who's confirmed to buy, and also if someone created a payment plan, you can indicate who created the payment plan. Now, as far as the salesperson, that's the sold by one and sold by two, if you generate a sales report and you have multiple salespeople in there, they'll get half credit for that sale. So, for example, if this was a total was a $500 job, salesperson 1 right now would get $500 credit on that report. If you have salesperson 1 and 2, they'd each get $250 worth of credit towards their numbers. All right, and the reason why that's important, because sometimes people run a sales report only for one salesperson, and they'll say, well, wait a minute, they're the totals are too low. I know for certain this job should be $500, but it's only showing us $250. I say, okay, well, let's go to the job. Oh, look, there's a second salesperson. That's why. Where when we pull both salespeople, you add the numbers up for those total, or for the two numbers for the same job, and it will come out to the $500 or whatever it is. All right. Over here on the right-hand side, we have a spot for confirmation letter. If you are required to send confirmation letters to your customers, under your parameters, special programs, you can indicate that they need a confirmation letter. Okay, you can check mark it there. And remember, a lot of times when you put information in here, if you're doing like a special job or whatever, and you put the information here, this is what gets pulled into this job screen when you add the job to the customer. All right. When you generate the confirmation letter, so if I go to print letters and confirmation letters, and I go through and I send this person out a confirmation letter, this checkbox will uncheck itself. That's how the system and you can know that this person has had a letter generated. And then, you get the confirmation letter, and then when they send it back, you can, enter the confirmation and stuff like that. All right. Again, there are some companies, I believe it's New York and Maine, I think, are the ones that are legally required to get confirmation letters. And because of that, they go through and actually will put them into like a no status. And then once they got the confirmation letter returned from their client, they'll put it into an active status. All right, so again, that's kind of another video, but like I said, that's how you can tell whether or not the confirmation letter is waiting to be generated or has been generated, or if it's blank, maybe someone forgot to check mark it in the parameters. All right, auto renew. Auto renew is what tells the system that when you process renewals at the end of the season, that you want to carry what they have from last year into next year. All right. Again, this is a setting under your parameters. You can check mark whether the job's auto renew, or you can even manually come in here. Maybe this customer is selling the property and they said, I don't want to auto renew my service or programs. You can uncheck it, and then when you do your renewals, it will skip over those. Now, again, there are ways of overriding it. If you forgot to check mark the auto renew in parameters, we can force them to renew, but be aware everyone would be renewed that had it. All right. Renewed tells the system that it has been renewed. Now again, usually you don't want to check mark it manually. That's why it pops up this message here saying, are you sure you want to do it? Because what's going to happen is when I do renewals, it's going to take a look at this box. Is this box check marks? If it is, skip over it. All right. So if I manually check mark that there, then this customer would not get renewed when I do my renewals for next year. Okay. If it is unchecked, then as long as it meets all the rest of the criteria, it's set to auto renew, and it's, you check mark the program or service or whatever, then it will renew this job for you. All right. We also have a renew date. Now, this is mostly for like interior pest control companies, because they actually have to process the renewals throughout the year. Usually about once a month, because what it is, they have customers sign up for different times of the season, stuff like that, or different times of the year, and they have maybe like a year program. You can put in a renew date. This is the date that you said, that you plan to renew it, because what's going to happen is when you go to tools and then process renewals, you can actually set a renewal date range, and this is the date it's going to look at. All right, so I'd go in here and say, okay, I'm going to renew the month of June. I set this to renew the month of June, and if there's dates blank or not for the month of June, it's not going to renew that customer. All right. Down here is a service year. It's going to tell you what year this job is part of. Okay. Now there is an option they've added called non-service year, and you can do like a non-service year special job or a non-service year program. And this area will actually be blank out. You won't actually have a service year listed. Again, another video on how to do non-service year stuff. But as I was saying, that's kind of the main screen here. Now, when we click on this little magnifying glass, we go into the detailed view for the individual services. All right. So you'll notice that down here we have an invoice number field. It's going to tell you what the number of the invoice is when it's been printed. Just a side note, this is also the field it looks at if you're doing monthly invoices. And again, if you've watched the monthly invoice crash course video, you'll remember that the job has to be set to statement only and cannot have an invoice number yet for you to be able to put on monthly invoices. Again, this is lets us know whether it's got an invoice number yet. You'll also see a posted date. This is the done date, the posted date is a date you actually put in the system that you did the work. So again, maybe you're posting production on a week's worth of work. Well, the done date might be the 1st, where the posted date might be the 5th, because again, you're putting them in delayed. All right. If the service gets reversed, if you go into the history tab and reverse production on something, what's going to do is going to create a second copy of that service line, and it's going to highlight the old one yellow, and it will actually check mark this reverse checkbox here as well to let you know that it has been reversed. Again, it's one of those things where it still exists because we can't delete financial history, but it will indicate, let you know it's been reversed out and stuff like that. If you reverse the printing of an invoice, if you go to print invoices and undo invoice print, you'll see that there's a reason not done that you can then select. And again, you have to put your invoice number in, hit the drop down, and of course the reasons are set up in the parameters as well. Well, if you have unprinted invoices, you can actually click this little icon right here. And if you have unprinted invoices for this program or service, it will then tell you, the date it was unprinted as well as the reason and so on and so forth. Obviously, I don't have one unprinted here, so that's why it doesn't pop up anything. Okay. This promise checkbox here, this is you promise the customer you're coming out on the date. Again, most of the time with fertilization, you don't use schedule dates, but if you do have a schedule date in there, then you can say, I promise I'm going to be out there. Now, what this promise checkbox does is when you pull your invoices, as long as the rest of the criteria is met, all right, on the show list here, this promise, the date box will actually be highlighted purple with white text. Now, it doesn't automatically print out the invoice, okay? You still have to have it checked here. So if I went through and let's say this second line was promised and I unchecked it, it would not print out that invoice, even though I have it marked as promised. Again, it would have to be selected to be printed out. But again, it's just a visual indicator. Down over here on the left-hand side, you can actually hit this little print icon, and it's the same as double-clicking the printed date. It's going to take and throw this service onto the job screen or the invoice screen for you, so you can print it out. You can also send the job to the scheduling work pool, and if you watch my crash course on Scheduler, I talk about how that works. You can also set a time window. Time window is kind of like that cable thing. We're going to be there between 2 and 4, and it could be anywhere from 2 p.m. to 3:59 p.m., So, again, you can set the time window. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that if you had the old mapping assistant, the one with the map point maps and everything, it did not care about time windows. But if you have the new routing assistant, that does care about time windows. It will actually go through, and when it's optimizing the route, it'll say, hey, are we allowed to be in the area, or are we allowed to service this property? And if you pull up the time, and if it looks at the time window, it says, oh, it's outside the time window, it's not going to route that particular property for that particular step of the thing. For example, let's say you had two houses, House A and House B next to each other. House A has no time window. It has 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. or whatever it is. Okay, let me fix that really quick. It has 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. And so it doesn't care. You can show up anytime at all. If House B has a time window of 10 to noon, all right, if you go through and set time window 10 to noon, and then House C is way on the other time of on the other side of the city. If it's 8 o'clock in the morning, what's going to happen is it's going to let you do House A, then it's going to route you out to House C, and then once it's past 10 o'clock, it's going to put you back to B. All right. So again, it will keep in time windows, and that's one of those kind of things we found out when routing system first launched. It's like people are like, well, why does it have me going all over the place? Well, turns out some of the accounts had time windows set up, some of the jobs had time windows, and it was honoring that. And that's a cool feature. I mean, it's a nice feature because if I was a customer and I said, don't come to my house before 10 o'clock, because I don't want people crawling around my property until I'm up and awake, well, then you want to set the time window, and yeah, you're going to have to go out across time, go to the next third property on the list or whatever, and then come back, but still, it's a customer service type thing. All right, scheduled. If you put in a schedule date up here in edit mode, oh, it's been a long day. 0610. Oh, actually, let's make this the 21st, 2015. If you put in a schedule date, it will fill out the schedule date down here in the bottom. Oh, dang it! Hold on. Let's try this again. 06/21/2015, and save. There we go. You'll see it will fill out the scheduled date down here. Okay. You can also put in a scheduled time. This is when you actually plan to show up. Now, again, for fertilization, not that big of a deal, but especially for interior pest control, then it becomes really important because you actually have to have access to the house. So you want to make sure that your customer is actually there on site and stuff. So this is where you can actually put the time of the appointment. Now, again, crash course on Scheduler. It talks about how you can change times and how that works and how they show up and stuff on the scheduler. But like I said, this is where you can actually set that time. Paid. If the customer has paid for the service and has been completely satisfied, then that's would be the pay date of the last amount of money that went towards that service. So again, if you if you have a $100 service and the customer made a $75 payment, and then you did a $25 credit a week later, that $25 credit would be the pay date. The date of the credit would be the pay date. So again, whatever the last money that went towards this service, that's the pay date. That's what the pay date is going to be. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes because of adjustments and stuff, pay dates look a little wonky because you're like, well, wait a minute, the customer paid me in full on this date, but it's showing a different pay date. Well, if we look at the history, we might see that there's actually a couple different payments or something that got applied to it. And it's just a matter of reallocating things. All right, production value. As I mentioned before, we recommend using discount codes instead of manually changing the price. Because the thing is if we come in here, and if I change this to $100, you'll see the production value goes to $100 as well as the renewal price goes to $100. If I change this to $50, you'll see the production value goes to $50, the renewal price goes to $50. So again, if you manually change the pricing, when you run a production report saying, how much work have we done? Well, guess what? It's going to show a little bit less than what it should have actually been worth. Because again, the production value is lower than what it would normally have been. So this is why, again, we say use discount codes. Even if it's like one discount code for one customer for one job, use a discount code so that way your production reports. Now, again, I could come in here and change it to 86.05. And then that way the production value is going to be correct on my production reports. But like I said, you're going to have those mismatches. Also, again, you'll see the renewal price, again, is renewed to $50. Now, if the customer, let me take that free visit out there because that free visit wouldn't make it zero. So again, if you renew this customer's job, next year their first round is going to be $50 also. So again, you could manually come in here and change it to 86.05, but it's best just to go ahead and just have the price as it would normally be, and then give them a discount code for whatever you want it to end up being. Okay. Again, that's the way we recommend doing it. Now, down here, technicians, okay, the text. This is when you print out your work and you do assign to technician. It's going to throw the technician names in there for you. When you post production, whatever technicians are selected on the production screen, those are the ones that are going to end up being locked into place. Now, again, you can change it around if you need to under the history tab. There are certain things you can change. Again, did a video on the history tab and talked about that. But like I was saying, though, is this is going to be the technicians that did the work or that you had planned to do the work that you assigned it to. You'll notice mine's blank now because I haven't printed out any work or anything like that. Man-hour rate. Man-hour rate is, if you're pricing by man-hour rate, how much you're charging per hour. Okay. Again, most fertilizations and stuff like that, aeration stuff, you don't do man-hour rate. Usually it's like a spring cleanup or, that sort of thing that you do a man-hour rate. Again, you set up in your parameters. It'll pull it from your parameters in here and throw it in there. And then, of course, do off man-hour rate. Again, I did a video of the 5 ways to do pricing. Check that out. I go through and show examples of all that stuff. Round notes to technician, round notes to customer. They work the same way as the program notes, except for it's specifically for the service. So if I click off the service onto the next one down, you'll see it's blank. If I go back here, it comes back in. So again, the notes do stack. All right. So again, if I were to print out this invoice, it would have both this set of notes and this set of notes. If I print out this one, it would only have this set of notes up here. All right. And the expiration date again functions exactly the same way. Now, call-aheads. As I mentioned before, you can do a call-ahead on every single round or service that's on this grid down here. You can also do it for the individual service. Maybe they're a new customer and you want your technician to call ahead and say, hey, introduce yourself to the person. Call them, find out if they're at home. If they are, introduce yourself, say hi, that sort of thing, and let them know a little bit more about you as a employee and so on. Again, you can use them for whatever you want. But again, the call-aheads will stack. This will have sensitivity and new customer on the first round. It will only have the sensitivity on the second round. So again, like I was saying, it's for the particular line item here or service that this bottom here affects. All right. Estimated man-hour rate. This is how long the system thinks you, or this is how long you told the system you think it should take to do. I have mine set up for price charts. So if we go to my price chart here and I go to the one I'm using, you'll see I have estimated minutes already in the system here. Again, you can change it. You can say actually it should take about 30 minutes, and then you can also update pricing information if you are doing man-hour pricing or whatever. But again, we're not doing man-hour. I'm using price charts, so you don't have to worry about it. Most people don't even have the estimated in there. Now, what's nice about setting the system up to throw in the estimated man hours and stuff like that, or have that information in there, is you can run reports of your estimated against actual. When you post production, you put in the actual time was there, and then you can run reports against estimated versus actual, and then find out, hey, are my employees going too fast? Are they going too slow? Because if you have an employee that should take a half an hour and they're taking 5 minutes on the job, they might not quite be doing their job right, or maybe they're running they're running up and down the field, just booking it. Again, or if they're taking longer, it's like, are they slacking off? Or again, maybe you estimated. But again, like I said, As long as that information's in there, you can run reports against it, as with most things in software. If you've called the customer, you can actually indicate when you've called the customer there. Most of the time, though, people tend to use the call log, keep track of communications with the customer. All right. Now, once you have your service line and stuff like that, and like you have a discounts or whatever, it's going to show up down here. Now, again, last time I saved it, I had a total discount on there, so let's go ahead and change it to 20% discount. Hit save. Sure. All right, you'll see again there's that discount. And then if they got a prepaid, they'll get a prepaid discount. If they got tax and so on and so forth, that information will be on there. So again, it's one of those things where this information is flexible until you post-production. Once you've post-production, that information is then locked in a place. We cannot change or delete that information. And so you'd pretty much, if you had the wrong pricing or the wrong discount and you absolutely have to have an invoice with that information, you have to reverse production, correct the information on the new line that was service line is created, and then repost production on the second line. We usually recommend trying not to reverse things unless you really, really have to. We usually recommend just like doing adjustments or something like that. All right. Now, the last thing I want to talk about on this screen right here is up here at the top. You'll see we have show changelog, we have show hide diagrams and documents, we have show high repeat schedule, as well as target and preconditions. Now, this right here, the symbol will be different on special jobs, and I'll show you real quick on special jobs what it's for. But for the most part, these changelog, this is one of the most useful parts of the of keeping track of what's going on or what people are doing. This is also why we highly recommend that each person have their own login when they log into Service Assistant to keep track of who's making what changes. Now, there's a main changes made to customer. There's also a changelog icon on the customer screen itself. It's going to bring up the same screen here for you. But pretty much the top portion is what's been done to the customer. This bottom portion, what's been done to services that this customer has. So, for example, all those things like the changing the discount code, changing the call ahead reason, changing prices. Well, I changed the price from one price to another. I changed different prices, but it was the same price when I hit save, and that's why I did that. But again, different things that you change will keep track. Now, it doesn't keep track of every single change. There are certain things, like if you print out an invoice, it won't keep track of that. You print out the invoice. Now, if you reverse the invoice print, it will show that you reverse the invoice print. It will say prior, old status is $, new status is Y. And we've had that quite a few times where, someone's called up and said, hey, I have this invoice in my hand, but when I look at the customer screen, it's not showing as printed, okay? My technician went out and did the work, and I tried to post-production. It says, hey, this is not a valid invoice number. Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the changelog and say, well, wait a minute, right here, you're going to have to talk to RGN and ask them why on 6/14 at 10:45 a.m. they decided to reverse the invoice print. Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll have to talk to them. So again, like I said, this is a really good way of keeping track of what's been going on or who's been making changes. Unfortunately, it doesn't change everything, but it does, or keep track of everything, but it does keep track of quite a bit. All right. Now, the little pencil icon here is the diagrams and documents for the job itself. All right. This pretty much works the same way as the one on the customer screen. If you watch the diagrams and documents video for the customer screen, all these buttons and stuff, pretty much everything works the same way. But again, this is tied specifically to the job itself. All right. Now, under diagrams and documents on the customer screen, again, you can tell to show all linked documents, and most people tend to just use the main customer screen. But like I said, you can have one specifically for the job itself if you wanted to. All right. And again, like I said, everything works the same way. Just, click on the other stuff that you need to click on. All right. Under this show high repeat schedule, again, most of the time with programs, especially fertilization, you don't use schedule dates. But if you do use a schedule date, for example, if this is a program for like pest control and you want to use schedule dates, you can hit this little icon right here, and it's going to go through and show you the repeat information. Now, the way essentially it works is what you're going to do is, on edit mode, let's say we want 45 days between services. I can go to day and then type in 45 days. I can select what day of the week it's available to be done. So, for example, today it's Sunday, so the system doesn't yell at me about not being able to schedule for Sunday. I'm going to click Sunday, and then you can also put an end on date, and it's going to schedule until it hits that end on date, or until it hits the December 31st of the current service year, or until it hits, or runs out of rounds or services to schedule. So when I hit the update schedule button here, it's going to tell me, do I want to reschedule the first date? I'm going to hit no, and you'll see it builds it out. Now, of course, like I said, it only builds it out to the end of the service year that you're looking at. So it's only going to build out to December 31st of 2015. So because of that, it didn't schedule the last two because, again, there's too many days between those services. So if I change this to 15, hit update schedule, and then I'm not going to reschedule the first one. and see it builds it out. Now, if you do not want these schedule dates to change, you can then lock the schedule by clicking the little lock icon here, or the checkbox here. Otherwise, what it's going to do is when you post production on a service, all right, for the next service, it's going to look at the done date of the prior one, add this number of days, find the next available checkbox, and then adjust this or schedule this for the next service. So again, usually with fertilization, you don't have to worry about schedule dates, but for like interior pests and stuff, you may, because maybe the customer went on vacation and you weren't aware of it. You guys showed up, the door was locked, no one was home, and then you call the customer up. They say, "Oh, sorry, could you come out next week? We'll be back home." "Oh, sure." Well, you want the system to be able to, deal with that, and be able to say, okay, well, we post production next week. Now it's going to update the schedule a week later, type of thing. All right. You can also do it for every X amount of weeks. First and third week, second, and so on in the month. X number of months as well as X number of years, especially if you're doing like a 3-year pest control program, stuff like that. So again, keep in mind, you are going to be blocked if you hit 12/31/2015, but that's why they added a new feature called non-service year. I don't know if I mentioned a little earlier when I was talking about the service year down here, but non-service year will blank this out. Now, the thing about the non-service year, everything does have to be scheduled. You have to have scheduled dates in there, because when you run reports and stuff, it's not going to look at, there's no service year to look at. It's always going to be based off like done dates and stuff like that and scheduled dates. Okay? All right, so again, you can turn that show a high repeat on and off. Like I said, usually with fertilization, you don't have to worry about anything. Now, on this tab here, this None tab, having them all unchecked is the same as having them all checked. So if I were to check mark Wednesday, well, then it would only let me pull the work, if I have Wednesday selected on my invoice screen. So if I go to invoices here and I have it set for any day, it would let me pull. If I have it set for Wednesday only, it would pull if I had the check mark for Wednesday here, like this. Okay, but if I selected something like Monday, well, guess what? It wouldn't let me pull the job. All right? So again, there's all these different ways the software interacts with each other. And again, it's a little overwhelming when you first start, but I've been working, September, almost a year and a quarter. Or actually, was it June now? Yeah, so I actually about almost 2 years. I'm going to come up on 2 years here. All right. So like I said, you can toggle that on and off if you want it. It's there. Now, you can also look at targets and preconditions when you click on that icon. It's going to throw up here, and pretty much the precondition would be something like why you're going out there and doing the property. All right, so maybe doing it because of brown patches, or if you're targeting certain type of pests, you can indicate what kind of pests you're targeting and stuff like that. Put that information in there, and again, hit save, and then that way you can actually run reports and stuff against it. Like I said, normally by default that little bullseye thing isn't on. All right. So that's pretty much a rundown of the job screen. Now again, we've been using this program here, so I'm going to flip to a special job so I can show you what the special job is, the slight differences between that as well as with a service call, all right, and a repeating special. So if we go, I go back here, I'm going to close that for now, go to the customer screen here. Okay, customer. All right, there we go. So if I go into like this special job here, this mowing job, you'll see that these are all the lawn mowings I plan to do for the person. Now, again, this isn't a program. This is the same service being done over and over and over again. All right. You'll notice it doesn't say program up here. It just says job code. All right. You'll see also that this grid is turned on by default. There is no spot to turn it on and turn it off. That's replaced by the work order. I'll talk about that real quick here in a moment. So again, by default, you have to set some scheduling thing in there, even if it's none. All right, even if it's set to none, at least you have, something has to be in there. I mean, you could have none of no, blank dates and everything, but at least, again, something has to be in there. That's why that screen's up there. Again, you can also update the schedule. You can change information stuff. Again, it's going to schedule out to the last done date. I'm sorry, to the last or ends on date, December 31st of this current service year, or until it runs out of services. So I had it go out to 10/1. You'll see it went out to 10/1, but if I change it to, let's say, 08/25. And then I hit update schedule, you'll see that it does. Oh, I guess there were enough to do that. Oh, I only did 24. Okay, so let me try this again. Let's delete this out. Let's see here, delete. There we go. Oh, I don't want that 5 in there. There we go. All right, so we got 11 right here, and then I hit update schedule, and now you'll see it built out to 24. So again, you can stop the system from scheduling out. But again, like I said, if there is a service here, it will schedule out till December 31st or whatever the closest date to before December 31st it can. Now, again, you can lock the schedule as well as when the job's been completed. you can check mark that it's been completed. All right. In the case of this, like a special job here, like a repeating special, it's going to show you the maximum per year that can be done, as well as how many have been completed so far. All right. And then once the max per year matches the done, how many you've done, it will mark itself as completed. All right. But again, if you're completely done, you can manually just check mark it completed. And well, apparently in this one I can't because there's still completed services. But again, you can mark it as complete, and it won't pull the work for this job anymore. All right. Other than that, everything else is the same. Job notes, size information, call aheads, everything else. You can hit the little icon right here, and again, you can, in the first round, you can say call ahead reason, new customer, and again, it's pretty much functions the same way as I showed you a little bit earlier. But like I said, the big difference is you have that scheduled thing up there, and you can't turn it on or turn it off. Now, the other difference between a special job and a program outside of all the stuff I've talked about so far is special jobs also have this little icon here for work orders. Now, the job has to be set up for a work order for you to be able to set up the work order. So if I click this icon on mowing, you'll see its job's not coded for a work order. But if I come in here and I change it to, I should have at least one of them for work orders, do I? Yep, there we go. Save. I get this little icon. You'll see it pops over the work order screen. And then you can watch my crash course on how to do work orders if it's out there, or if I haven't done it yet, I'll make one. You can do, yeah, I think I did one. Yeah, crash course on work orders. You can watch that screen, and we'll talk about how to use that and so on and so forth. Now, you'll notice one thing I did too is I was actually able to go through and change the service that was on this customer on the fly. All right. The only reason I was able to do that because we haven't done anything yet. Now, if I've gone through and actually posted production on stuff or whatever, it would not let me change this job code. Okay, if I wanted to actually change what the job was, I'd have to cancel the job out, and then once I've canceled the job out, set the new job up, and so on and so forth. Again, since there was nothing locked into place here, there's nothing in the financial history. That's why it allowed me to make that change on the fly. All right. Another thing I want to show you is I want to show you service call. Now, again, the service call is pretty much like a special job, except for on service calls, you're probably going to want to put in a code, like a target or condition while you're going back out there. Now, one thing to know too is when you go to create a service call, and the customer already has notes already on their on some of their jobs or programs. Where am I? Oh, I got way too many jobs in there. There we go. Okay, it's going to ask you if you want to copy notes from another job. All right, so I can go through and grab the notes for round one. Maybe I'm doing a service call on round one. I can copy it, and it'll throw those notes in there for me. You'll also notice it goes to the target. It has the target box here automatically. Okay, so when you add a special job or a service call, because again, you're going out there because maybe there's bare spots, and that's why you're doing a follow-up visit or whatever. A lot of times when people do service calls, they don't charge for a service call, but there are some companies out there you can set them up just like you would any other special job as far as how to price it. All right. One more thing I want to show you, just remembered. You can also do what's called an initial service, and I want to show you why it's different on the job screen. When you pull up an initial service, you'll see how that one's bold printed. If you do have initial services set up, and again, I did a crash course on initial services, it will actually throw that initial service for the first year that they have it. Then when you do your renewals, it's going to renew into whatever normally would be in that first slot there. So, again, I did a crash course on how to set up initial services, so you may want to check that out if you're curious. All right. Hope that helps with you guys learning about the job screen. Hopes, clarify some things. Maybe even learn something new about the Promise or the SAP or something like that. But again, like I said, I hope this helps. And I just realized we're at like almost 52 minutes. I hope you had a lot of coffee for that one. Of course, you could always pause and get more if you need to. So, all right, you guys have yourself a wonderful